Welcome to the Joy Hour podcast. Today I am in the studio with my best friend, my wife, Lana Lyman. Welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to be great at listening today. I'm going to ask you some questions here in a little bit. And today is really to learn a lot about you and a lot about what you do, working with people, and talk about temperament and connection and purpose. And I'm so excited about that. But you know me, I got to have a little fun before we get started.
Of course.
So, what is your favorite part about raising and teaching the three rascals that we call kids?
Oh, wow. I think just learning and being on the journey with them of just every day is something different and every day is learning something new. Probably my favorite thing about homeschooling is that I'm learning with them. They don't know that all the time. A lot of times they think I have all the answers. I think the older ones are catching on now.
Right.
But yeah, it's like I will teach them sometimes as if I know what, I'm talking about, but really I'm learning a lot of things with them. Should probably say relearning because I know I learned this stuff back in school, but you know how it is, you forget certain things. And so yeah, but I think that's probably my favorite thing is just whether it's school or just life in general. I feel like, life is our classroom. Mm-hmm. And so everything from disappointing experiences that they have to the highs, the lows, and education, all of it is a learning experience. And I feel like I'm on that journey with them, and that's really exciting.
Awesome. Well, I'm so thankful that before we even had Carter, our first, you had made a decision to do that. And now he is 16 years old, and our daughter's 13, and our youngest is 9. Yeah. And it just, as a father, I am so thankful for the thousands of hours that you've put in with them, the thousands of hours you've put in on your own by yourself in the mornings, doing so much studying in the Word of God and so many books. And now you're well on your way to getting another plaque on the wall.
Yeah, hopefully.
Going for your doctorate. I'm so proud of you there. You've got your master's and continue to educate yourself, which takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of finances. I know there's been lots of books and curriculum, things that you've needed. And I'm so blessed to be a part of your journey. We are very different, you and I.
Oh, yes, we are.
And I know with the kids, I get to be the fun guy and get to mainly experience those moments as you educate them. I just goof off with them. But I'm so thankful God put us together 21 years ago. And here we are sharing some of our life experiences and hope to bless and help others through this podcast today. And I know we'll do many more. But thank you again for being in here. I want to make the most of the time that we have on this one, specifically talking today about temperament, about the counseling services that you do and why you do it, maybe why you got into it. And I'll jump into the questions if you're ready.
Sure.
All right. Big question I still have because I don't fully understand it.
Okay.
And I mean that sincerely. I hear you talk about it a lot.
Okay.
But what is temperament?
All right. Well, temperament is this unique identity that we all bring into the world. So we all have our own identity that we bring into the world when we're born called our temperament. And this is an identity that God gives us, and it has to do with the plan that He has for our life. So our temperaments that are given to us by God have the potential strengths that we need to carry out whatever His plan is for our life. But within every strength that temperament has, there's also a potential weakness. And so the strengths are there to help us fulfill His purpose for our life. The weaknesses are there to teach us to depend on God. So temperament basically is the basis of our inner self, okay? It's that inborn, God-created part of us that the rest of human behavior rests upon. And we have scripture that we feel like helps prove that temperament is inborn. And you can look at Psalm 139 to see this, where David talked about, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." So the psalmist here is saying that God created him with a unique mind and emotional state, his inward parts that he mentions, as well as created his physical structure and appearance, which is his outward parts. And the psalmist can see that God has made him a separate and unique individual, different from everyone else. Okay, so our basic identity is formed by the various attributes and components that make up our differences. And we can look all around and see that, and you just mentioned it, we are very different from each other. So this identity is basically unchangeable because a very wise God created it. And it's right for us, in spite of our efforts to change it, improve upon it, or modify it, we'll try to do that, but we can't change that inborn temperament that God gave us. And this God-created, God-given, unique identity is called our temperament. And, something else about that, it's that part of, I like to tell people, temperament is that part of us that determines how we react to people, places, and things. How we respond to the environment around us and the world around us. Relationally speaking, our temperament will affect our perceptions of ourselves, the people who love us, our relationship with God, and it also tells us our ability to accomplish tasks, make decisions, handle stress. All of that is tied into our temperament. And individual temperament determines our basic needs of life, how we respond when those needs are not met, which is a really big deal. Our basic temperament traits help set the tone and the rhythm by which we live our life. There's another part of Psalm 139 that says, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my informed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. So these verses provide insight concerning the inborn equipping that we need to react to our environment. This equipping was given to us by God after he knew his purpose for us. So we believe that God, before we were ever born, he already knew what the purpose he had for our life was. And he created within each of us the unique temperament that we needed to fulfill that plan and purpose. He gave us the tools or the temperament to accomplish his purpose and to react to our environment and those around us in such a way that we might bring glory to him. And so Paul actually reiterated this theme in the New Testament when in Ephesians he says, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. And then in 2 Corinthians he said, therefore we do not lose heart, but through our outer man, us decaying, yet our inner man, which is where your temperament is found, is being renewed day by day. So that's just kind of in a long nutshell, I guess.
It's very good. I was just thinking about our two sons and how a lot of areas they're very different.
Absolutely.
And how important it is as a parent to complement those differences instead of, I'll use an example, if I was to look at Clark, our youngest, and say, I wish you were more like Carter in any certain area.
Right.
What's that going to do to him as a child when he hears his dad say, I wish you were more like your brother? Mm-hmm. And if I'm trying to force him into being somebody that he's not, what's that really going to do to him deep down in his emotions and how he closes off or opens up to the relationship with me as his dad? I want to be so careful in realizing like they are night and day different. Mm-hmm. And I love that they are. Right. And realizing this, God knew if we were all the same, the world actually wouldn't even function. Mm-hmm. Like you take me, for example, and say, hey, Tom, go pick up all that garbage and put it in the dumpster. I get excited. Whereas you say, go paint that wall. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to do that. And that's just an example. But, we're very different. Some people are very outdoors, indoors. Some people, love to spend a lot of time by themselves. Some people love to be around people a lot. There's just drastic differences in so many areas. I want you to keep going on this topic. But I think as a father,
all those things you're mentioning are temperament related. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about the child example, and if you tried to force, one child to be like the other, or what would that do to his relationship with you? Yeah. Which, yes, it would absolutely impact it, but more so, what would that do to his relationship with others and his view of himself? Yeah. Because now he's feeling pressured and forced into a box that doesn't fit his temperament. And so this is where so much, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but where so much internal stress and conflict come from in people's lives is that they're trying to be something they weren't created to be. And whether that's by choice, where they feel this like comparison of I need to be like this person, or I need to be more extroverted when they were really created to be an introvert, or whatever the situation, or it's more by pressure and force from parents, friends, other influences in their life, and it can have devastating effects on the individual.
Right. I don't want to dive off on too many stories here, but there is a gentleman in this area here that grew up being told years ago that he was going to amount to nothing and he was worth nothing, and even was given up to another family member, which then was given up after that, and just everybody gave up on him. And he ended up going into the military for a while, and he came out and he actually became a garbage man, and he picked up garbage. And after that, he ended up in a lot of areas of life being extremely successful, to the point a national company bought out his company. He has the largest privately owned car museum in the world. And he was told his entire childhood he was worth nothing, amount to nothing. He wasn't good for anything. Probably compared him to other siblings or whatever his lifestyle was growing up. I can't imagine. But it's so tragic that some people wouldn't have that outcome, and they would let it get to them and say, I'm not good enough, and I didn't measure up to. My dad wanted me to play football, and I was no good, but all I wanted to do was, play music or be a chef or an artist. And so I think that we're going to talk on that a little more, is being aware of your children, being aware of your spouse, being aware of others' temperaments is so important too, knowing that if we complement each other on those topics, it can be beautiful. Right. If we put each other down and say, I wish you were like so-and-so, it's very damaging. So dive into a little bit, and I still don't fully understand this one either, the difference. A lot of times people use the word personality. And so what is the real breakdown difference of temperament, character, personality?
Okay. Well, temperament, like we said, is the inborn part of a person that determines how you react to people, places, and things. It affects how we interact with our environment, the world around us. It also pinpoints our perceptions of ourselves, God, the people who love us, how much love and affection we need. It is the determining factor in how we use power, how we make decisions, how well we handle stress and pressure. It's also the source of our gut level emotions. So temperament is exhibited, we can see this in the differences between newborn babies and how they react to stimuli. So if you remember like old school days where they would put newborns in the nursery at the hospital, right? And you see them all in their little cubicles, right? You would see some babies laying there completely content, right? Not crying. Other babies screaming like crazy. And what's the difference there? Some of them, it's not, well, maybe they're hungry. Maybe they're this. But anybody who's been a parent of more than one child knows every one of those children that you've had are all unique, even from the time they're born, in what they respond to and what they need. Some babies need more affection. They need to be held and touched and cuddled more. Other children are more content to be, I remember our firstborn, you could lay him down in the crib and he'd put himself to sleep almost immediately from coming home from the hospital. We had other children that if you weren't holding them, they were having a meltdown. So we see that this is obvious from birth. Okay, so that's temperament. Tells us how we respond, react, tells us what our needs are in these different areas, tells us if we're a leader, a follower, all of these things that explains. Now, character is something that's taught, okay? It can be either good or bad. It's formed by a person's environment. And so take an example, if a man steals or if he's honest, that's a character quality that can be learned, right? And then it can be chosen consistently. And character can be changed during one's lifetime through the act of will, considerable awareness, self-discipline. So maybe someone is a thief, but then they choose to change and become honest. So that's something that can be changed. Temperament cannot be changed. You are given that at birth. Now, it doesn't mean you always behave according to your temperament, and we'll talk about that in a minute. but your temperament stays the same throughout your life. And I've had so many clients that are like, well, I used to be, very introverted when I was in middle school or high school, but now as an adult, I'm extroverted. And so they'll think that they change. I actually had somebody just this last week say, I used to be introverted when I was a teenager, but then I changed as an adult in my 20s and I became extroverted. I was like, because according to their temperament report, they're actually extroverted in this area. And I was like, no, actually, let's look at this, because when you were in middle school and high school and you claimed that you were introverted then, what were you experiencing like inside? Did you feel internal frustration? Did you feel stress and anxiety? Maybe most likely subconsciously, not even realizing where it was coming from, because you really wanted to talk to people and be outgoing, but you were holding back for whatever reasons. That could be environment, that could be, there's all kinds of reasons that you could do that, choose to do that. And he was like, yeah, I do actually remember feeling that way. I'm like, and now as an adult that you're finding yourself more extroverted, do you feel that frustration is gone? And it was just like this eye-opening moment for him where he was like, you're right. Like, I don't have that internal conflict and frustration anymore. And so it's not that you changed, it's that you're actually living more in accordance to your temperament now than you did when you were younger. So we've got temperament, character. The last one is personality. So this is the component that we select to portray ourselves to the world. This process of selection is usually unconscious, but it can also be chosen as an act of the will. So you can decide that you're going to behave a certain way for a certain amount of time. Most often, this is a mask, and though it has a measure of reality, it's not completely honest. It's the personality that we use for protection from those around us, and those elements of our environment which we think are hurtful to us. This is one of our defense mechanisms to keep ourselves from being totally demolished emotionally, and that's our personality that we choose. This same mechanism often builds up walls that keep out love and affection as well as hurtful situations. So it's out of the personality that we choose to act out the behavior patterns we think are appropriate to get us what we need. Personality reveals the strategies that we learn to survive in the world. So I can choose, I can choose to be extroverted just for a moment, for an event, for even if I'm really introverted by nature. I can't stay that way forever, though. Or I might actually be extroverted, but in the case of this one guy, he actually chose the personality of an introvert, probably as a way of protection from something. Yeah. It could be bullying. It could have been, I don't know the exact situation there, but there's all kinds of reasons why that would be a personality that he chose to wear as a mask, but it wasn't his true identity. So what happens is you take character, temperament, personality, all three of these together determine how we act and behave in our environment and the world around us. So we can respond for a while out of our personality, but eventually our character and temperament are going to be displayed. And people can act one way at the office or in public, but then get home and act a completely different way, right? We've seen that because you can only keep up the charade of personality, whatever it is, for so long if it doesn't line up with your true temperament. So we learn how to survive with our personality, but ultimately it's our temperament and our character that reveal who we really are. So those three components together, though, is what actually make up the inner man that we read about so much in Scripture. Especially in Psalm, you'll read David. He talks a lot about the inner man. Yeah. And anytime you see that, that's what he's referring to. It's the soul area of a man that you find your temperament at. I hope that explained.
I've got so many thoughts going through my mind right now. The introvert-extrovert thing, I think in my life I've been both. I also personally,
you are both.
Right. Thank you. And I also don't think there's anything right or wrong with either one, as far as some people having the feeling of, oh, I'm introverted. They almost say it like it's a bad thing. I think that the more we can respect each other for how we are,
how unique we are,
how unique we are, and the environment plays a big role in it. There's certain environments where I'm going to be, believe it or not, just kind of there in the room. Others, I'm going to probably be the golden retriever, I've been called, Tom the fire hose. But growing up, especially in those impressionable childhood years, it's so important to to go out of our way as adults and really think about how's that kid feel right now? How's that young person developing? How do they see themselves as far as, confidence and
Right.
being able to be confident as an introvert, being able to be confident. Let's use the employer employee or the landlord or the tenant. There's nothing wrong with either of those.
No.
Renting is a great thing whenever it's the right time to do it. And owning is a great thing as well. But, we each have different phases of life we go through, different environments we go through. And what I'm trying to get at here is encouraging people change your environment. If you feel like you're being forced day after day to wear a mask every second of the day and to be somebody that you're not, then you really need to change your circle. You really need to start looking at other options for maybe moving to a different city, maybe reaching out and stepping out on a limb and going to a different church or a different 12-step program or a different community event, being a member of a different club or organization. But if you're not living your true self on at least 90% of your day, your week, then you're miserable and you're trying to force yourself and you're wearing the mask all the time. I think we all wear a mask at certain times. I
Yeah, of
think we have
course.
those days where we're not
Absolutely.
just on cloud nine and we're not, but we go to an environment where we're expected to be, and those expectations become a weight. Like, I'm supposed to act this way. I'm supposed to do this or be this person. And social media has played such a horrible role in that because
Absolutely.
people can cut and clip their little videos and show that they're always this, they're always that, and they're not. I'll never forget a clip I saw with Robin Williams, and it's just a picture of him, and it said, "This is what the face of depression looks like."
Hmm.
And we all know his story
Yeah.
and what happened, and it's happening on a daily basis. And I think people are, allowing this force to come upon them that I'm not good enough. I'm not who I'm supposed to be. I'm not what my parents expected. I'm not what the world said I'm supposed to be. And I'm here to tell you, she's here to tell you that if you get into your temperament, we're going to talk more on it here and do some temperament therapy, uh, which is my next question here. But what is temperament therapy? But to start to understand yourself, you get to the point you're like, I can love everybody. Not everybody's going to love me, and that's fine. But I can love some people from a distance and not have to give a hoot what they really think. I want to be my true self. I want to be who God made me to be. And so this has helped me a lot in becoming a little more self-aware, self-confident, yet humble, and know, like, I'm made of dirt. I'm going back to the dirt. This is all for a short amount of time. God, what's my purpose?
Right.
What am I supposed to be doing today? Be a great father, be a great husband, reach out to others, love others, but not live this life where I feel so much pressure. I'm not good enough or I'm not intelligent enough. I used to run really hard when somebody said the name game trivia. I was out of the room. I didn't want to play trivia because I felt so stupid, and all that pressure. But as people are listening to this and wanting to know more, and this has been so helpful already, what is temperament therapy?
Well, temperament therapy is based on the understanding that the inner man, so what we just talked
Hmm.
about, and applying that knowledge to being balanced in the three different areas of your temperament. So you have three areas that we measure when we do temperament therapy. That's your inclusion, your control, and your affection. So the inclusion area has to do with your socialization aspect, so your social orientation and your intellectual energy. Okay. Your control area is the amount of willpower you have, how much control you want to have over others, how much control you're willing to let them have over you. That's the area that will determine if you're a follower or a leader. Okay. Then your affection area is those deep personal relationships that you have and how you respond, how much affection you show, how much you need from any deep personal relationships. So learning what your temperament is, how to be balanced in those three areas. And so the goal of temperament therapy is to assist the individual in understanding how to live out their God-given strengths. Because remember, we talked about for every temperament, each temperament comes with its own set of strengths, unique strengths that are given to fulfill the purpose God has for their life. And then within each strength is a potential weakness. And so we teach the individual about that, what those are. And so we're trying to teach them how to live out their strengths and overcome their weaknesses in healthy ways. Okay. And it's really important for each of us to understand that the wider the gap between temperament and actual behavior. So we talked about personality and how you can act one way and it could be so far from what your actual inborn temperament is. But the wider that gap is between actual behavior and temperament, the greater the individual's anxiety levels are going to be. And so often I have found with people, this is a subconscious, underlying anxiety that it's just like they can't quite, it's like this frustration, this internal frustration that they can't quite pinpoint where is this coming from. And then as we start going through their temperament report, they start realizing what their needs are and if those needs are being met or not. And it's very easy to identify a person's stress levels and anxiety levels and figure out where they're coming from. So temperament therapy overall is concerned with, first of all, identifying what an individual's basic temperament is and its needs, the way that person goes about meeting those needs. That's really key. And then the effect of not meeting those needs. Because so many of us, that's where the stress is coming from. We have needs that aren't being met. And so we need to talk about that. And so the 3 aspects of temperament therapy are understanding your unique self, which you've talked about that, and the needs that you have within your temperament, surrendering to God's plan for us, and then a willingness to surrender any ungodly ways that we have of meeting our temperament needs. Because oftentimes we may not even recognize what our temperament needs are, but we're still trying to meet those needs subconsciously. Like we're attempting to meet these needs, but oftentimes we're doing it in ungodly ways. Yeah. Okay. And so we talk about that in our temperament therapy. And we believe, and I've seen this over and over again, that both interpersonal and inner conflict are all temperament related and caused by either trying to meet legitimate temperament needs in ungodly ways, temperament needs that are out of balance. So I talked about your inclusion, control, and affection areas. Maybe all of your needs in inclusion are being met, but some of your affection needs aren't being met, or some in 2 of the areas are being met, but none in one of the, either way, you're out of balance. So our goal is to find a balance between all 3 areas and have your needs met in all 3 of those areas. Right. And then the third thing that causes inner conflict is your reaction to unmet temperament needs, if there's just needs that are completely being ignored. So, yeah, that's kind of temperament therapy in a nutshell.
Is there anything right or wrong about being a leader or a follower?
Absolutely not. The world needs both.
And
it's really important to understand where your strengths lie. Some people aren't given the strengths of a leader, and that's okay.
And I want to clarify that too, because I think it's possible that most of us are both.
Yes, and that's...
Maybe I can be a leader in the construction industry, great. But in a lot of areas, maybe in spiritual areas or other areas, I'm a follower, and I'm trying to use good examples here, but to complement each other and know that, and there's times in life, there's seasons too, where I might be a great leader for a year or two, and I might need to kind of take a back seat. And in some ways, I think even at 46 years old, I think I'm a great second man in a lot of areas. For many, many years in construction, I had my brother and my dad as my boss, and I remember being very driven to really impress and shock them at how fast I could do what we did in construction. And I answered to them on a daily basis. And there was times I thought, I want to be my own boss. I think there's such a pressure to be your own boss and own your own company. But I want to encourage people that are listening. There's seasons of life. There's times you may be more of a follower. There may be times you're more of a leader. There's nothing right or wrong with either one. But accepting those things and going, right now, it is what it is. And I kind of like it. There's times where I like following and not being the one that planned everything and organized everything, has to answer to everything. There's other times I like to lead in certain aspects.
Aren't we all followers to some extent?
Yeah.
Every leader has somebody that they answer to. We all answer to somebody.
But I think there's some social pressures out there, different influencers that will, just, you gotta, entrepreneur, and I own several businesses, and there's all this pride that's wrapped up in the me monster.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, really?
Some people aren't wired to handle that type of pressure and stress.
Yeah.
So it definitely, and that's all temperament related.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, how about, I know I got a couple more questions written down here. Jump into that. Yeah, let's stay on this. How would you say temperament ties in with connection and purpose?
Okay. Well, we talked about, being created with a God-given purpose in mind. God had that preordained before you were ever born. We also were all wired to need connection. Okay, it doesn't matter what your temperament is. Yes, there are some temperaments that need people more than other temperaments need people. Okay, that's true. But we all need connection. And I mean, this is kind of what Joy Hour and everything that you talk about here is about, is that need that we all have for connection. We also were all created with this void that can only be filled by God, filled by God.
Yeah.
And so this connection that we crave, and then you have this void that you were created with for a reason, it's so that you can have God. And so often we try to fill this void with other things. We try to meet our temperament needs in ways that aren't pleasing to God, that don't even have him in the picture. And therefore we have stress, we have conflict in our life. And what we ultimately need, though, and we're created to need more than anything, is connection, the connection that we crave with our Creator. And so God gave us this void so that he could come in and fill it. And so, yes, we need connection, and temperament helps tie in with that. But as you're learning about your temperament and this purpose that God's given you for your life, if you're not connecting with your Creator, you're missing the whole purpose. I can learn about my temperament all day long, and I can learn about my strengths, my weaknesses, but I'm never going to truly know and understand my purpose in life if I don't connect with my Creator.
Yeah.
So, I love what Joy Hour is all about. I love the whole topic of connection and everything that we're doing in the community here. And yes, connection with people is important. Yes, I can say as a therapist, it helps mental health. It helps your relationships. It helps getting out of isolation is so key. That you can do that all day long, but you're never going to truly feel that contentment and that void filled the way it's supposed to be if you don't ultimately connect with the one who created you.
Right. We got the big book here, the Bible, and I'll just share with you lately what I've been doing a lot to increase the connection, and that's, reading the Bible, of course. But it's also holding it. Just the actual physical Bible has brought me a lot of peace, a lot of confidence, knowing like he made me. I'm about halfway through the average lifespan as far as life on earth. And I feel like I've achieved a lot of good things, 3 wonderful kids, 21 years of marriage, things like that. But what is tomorrow? What's he want me to do next year? Am I living in God's will? Because when I'm in God's will, and I know I have a purpose, it's exciting. And each day is a huge something I'm looking forward to, like God's using me. But without this and applying this to my life and my own personal time, I think I'd be floundering, not knowing, like, am I doing what he wants? Am I doing what I'm supposed to? And, so many hours have been spent on the phone, and I'm talking about my own life, but if the shoe fits, I challenge you to change some habits. Take at least 1 hour of not using your phone compared to maybe last week and put it into even 10 minutes. Start to do 10 minutes a day of looking through his word. This is the best and most important tool he left us with, is the Bible. But each person needs to find that connection on their own. And it's been beautiful to know, like, the weaknesses I have are actually there for, I think, 2 reasons. One, to run to God and say, I feel weak.
Absolutely.
But also so that we can allow your strength to block. My weakness is probably your strength or his strength, right? And so that creates that unity.
Right.
And God designed marriage for unity. He designed church body, the body of Christ for unity. He designed even businesses and schools and partnerships for unity. Right. But when you have even a partnership in business and, 2 people think that they both have all the strengths and it's all the me, it doesn't work. Right. But when one partner can look at the other and say, every one of my weaknesses is your strengths,
What's that
That's
interdependence
that's a
that
good
you're
partnership.
looking for?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be so independent. I've got this. I don't need anybody. But it's not healthy to be dependent,
Right.
to where I can't do anything without you.
Right.
But it's where that interdependence comes in, where, like you just said, your strengths are my weaknesses, and vice versa. And that's why God made us all. I mean, there's a big purpose out there. There's a big harvest. There's a lot of work to do in these last days. And He's given all of us the temperament needed to fulfill whatever our role is in that.
Yeah.
And so if we could tap into that and then work together in that interdependence, using our strengths and relying on each other and helping each other, and it could be such a beautiful thing and the way God intended it to be.
Yeah. The confidence that I've received from the Bible in the last 2.5 years has been incredible. Just more than I ever thought it could be. And it's just getting better and better. But I think back to the other years, and of course I'm going to talk on this and the sobriety journey. But alcohol used to bring a false sense of confidence. And I hate that so many years and so many people have fallen trapped to this is you feel insecure, or maybe you feel introverted and you're going to a networking event or an environment where you need to be bubbly and you're all this pressure to be this certain way. And so you pound a couple drinks, you walk in, and, some people call it a social lubricant or whatever, to get the tongue going so you feel normal. Like, what is normal, right? We could talk on that. But I just would encourage those listening, if you have anybody in your life, if you're going through it and you found that you're choosing a substance, alcohol or drugs or any coping mechanisms, even how many degrees you have on the wall, or how many cars you have in the driveway, or how many dollars you have in your bank account, thinking that's who you are and that's your identity, you're gonna find out one day you're very wrong. Your identity is so much more beautiful than any materialistic things, than any degrees on the wall. And education's great, don't get me wrong, but not if it's not based on this. And I've spent so much time in Ecclesiastes recently, Solomon talking about, like, what is life all about? What's the whole purpose? He tried this, the wisest man on earth. He had everything he wanted, and it still was nothing that he really wanted, because he had that God-sized void and he was trying everything. But when you finally step back and go, hold on, man's whole duty is to fear God and obey his commands and say, God, what's your purpose for my life? And to walk in that daily. And I don't know any other tool on the face of the earth other than the Bible that can give that confidence that this is what God, Proverbs. I mean, I know businessmen that really aren't even churchmen or whatever. They don't, maybe attend a church, but they read Proverbs every day. It gives so much wisdom and so much clarity on, this is how you should conduct business. This is how you should treat people. This is what you should do or shouldn't do. And I don't know if we're still on topic
I would
here.
say the Word of God and temperament therapy.
Yes.
Help you with that. Those are the two tools that work hand in hand.
And I want to go through that again. On the temperament, two things I don't want to forget. If somebody's curious on how to do the test, remind me how that went. I got on, I think, answered how many questions it was.
Well, they've changed it. It used to be like 62 questions.
So
now it's like 18.
Okay.
So it's a lot easier than it used to be.
18 questions on my phone or on a computer.
It's online. Yeah, it's
and,
online test.
Kind of silly or different
You have
questions.
to go through a temperament therapist to take the test. You can't just go find it. So it's not like your personality quizzes that you find online. It's nothing like that.
Which those are helpful, but this is
This is way more detailed and going to be more accurate.
Yeah. So if somebody listening wanted to do temperament therapy with you, how would they do that?
They could either reach out and email me at lanalyman@gmail.com, or they can also find my scheduling page at dsministries.com. So DSMINISTRIES.
Good job, yeah.
Did that off the top of my head. .com, which is who I work for, so Daystar Ministries. And so they could find me there or just at my email. And you just make an appointment. We have a quick conversation about temperament therapy, which you've kind of heard the whole thing here. So you probably could skip that part. But then you would do the online test and then schedule sessions to go through it with a therapist.
I know we got a few more minutes here. understanding not just my own temperament, but my next challenge is to understand yours
Good luck.
and to understand our children's.
Right.
You know,
And we're all so different, which is it makes it fun.
yeah.
It's an adventure.
And the printout alone that it gave me, along with you going through it with me, showed me like when I'm craving something I think is going to make me feel better in a certain area, pause, stop. Actually, what I'm lacking is this. And I put those pieces together and I read my own personal report. It's like, oh, that's what's going on. It just, I can't explain it well enough, but doing the temperament therapy has allowed me to know myself better, has allowed me to see the red lights in my life long before I go down a road of choosing the wrong coping mechanism. Coming out of many, many years of addiction, I have learned that if I'm ever hungry, angry, lonely, tired, bored, stressed, be careful. And if I'm 2 or 3 of those at the same time, I better be real careful.
Well, and your temperament is more prone to to turn to the wrong things, and that's what's so important to understand.
Every gas
too.
station has alcohol. Everywhere you go, there's all kinds of things.
You'll hear
to.
anybody. The whole like halt. Being careful when you're those things. That's true for everybody, but the coping that people would turn to is going to vary, obviously, by individual. And some people might say, well, that's based on your environment or your upbringing or this. A lot of that is based on temperament, though. Right. A lot of it is. And so there are certain temperaments that are more prone to turn to behaviors that don't even fit their own moral compass. Right. They know their behaviors that they don't agree with, they know are wrong, but for different reasons, they'll still give in to those things. Yeah. And so when you can know that about yourself and understand that about yourself, it helps set you up to maybe put better barriers and boundaries in your life to protect you.
I know we don't have time to get into the weeds on this topic, but pornography actually has been in my life for many, many years, and I've been working on tools to conquer that. And it's been great how this temperament therapy has tied in with other tools I've been using that have helped not go down that road of that coping mechanism that always brought so much guilt and so much shame and so much deteriorating of my confidence as a father and a husband and a man. And I just would encourage anybody out there, like, yeah, it's right there. It's free. It's a click of a button on a phone, and there it is. It's full access to all kinds of pornography and sick things out there that will just destroy a marriage and destroy being a good father and destroy being a good mother. And so if you're fighting any of those demons, know that there are tools, temperament therapy, the Bible, combining those 12-step programs. My wife and I are involved in quite a few different things that have really helped our marriage. Jumping into temperament and marriage. So how have you seen that understanding my temperament has helped you? Because I know you understand mine. I have yet to fully understand and really work on yours. That's on my to-do list. I'll get there, baby. But how has...
Did you say maybe or baby?
Baby.
Okay,
I'll get there, babe. Don't worry.
Just checking.
No, not maybe nothing. Okay. I'm doing this stuff.
Just
you
checking.
Understanding mine, how has that helped?
I used to get so mad at you. I'm talking about like years and years ago, early in marriage. I would just get so frustrated. And I would get angry at you for certain behaviors and certain things. And since learning your temperament, though, it's helped me realize that, because what did I say temperament does? It teaches us why we react to people, places, and things the way that we do, right? So now I know why you do certain things, okay? And I know it's not just, why can't you change? Why can't you not do this? Or why, and not that I would say those things, but I would think those things. Right. And so now that I understand your temperament, I understand, like, this is the way God created you. There are certain things about you that maybe sometimes frustrate me if I'm not careful because my temperament's different than yours. But God made you this way. And so if I try to, like we talked about with children, if I try to fit you into my box, then that's not the way God intended your life to be. And I have to learn as a wife how to celebrate your strengths, work with those strengths. And yes, you have weaknesses, and I know those too, by the way. But, be willing to overlook the weaknesses, help you in those. There are times that sometimes you'll be having a frustrating moment or whatever. And yeah, I will kind of pull out my therapy hat and be like, that this is one of your temperament needs, or this is, so I identify things that before I think I would have been completely baffled by some of your behaviors, frustrated, angry, resentful, all kinds of things. And it doesn't mean we still don't have issues and things to work on. Just because here's the thing, just because you know your temperament, because you know your spouse's or your children's temperament, it doesn't just immediately take away all the frustrations and the conflict. You have to, both parties, in this case, spouses, have to be willing to work on their own temperament issues, their own weaknesses, and working on their own needs. I can't expect you to meet and fulfill all my needs. You can't expect me to meet and fulfill all yours. And so if both parties aren't always working on that, then yeah, you might sail smooth for just a little bit, but then have another blow up a little down the road if you lose sight of these temperament differences. But I feel like for me, to answer your question, it's definitely, I look at you completely different, and things that used to frustrate me about you and sometimes even annoy me, I will just be honest and say, about you. Now I've actually learned to appreciate things about you that maybe I didn't before, because I've realized that this is how God made you, and like, who am I to question the Creator and His creation? Now, when you like give into the weaknesses or whatever, then I still might get frustrated with you sometimes, but overall, it's helped a lot.
Yeah. We've all heard a lot of jokes about, people getting married and then working their entire life to change each other,
Yeah.
And you talked earlier about character, personality, and temperament. I think it's okay to work husband and wife with each other to maybe work on changing some character things or even some personality things, but giving each other freedom to say, if that's a temperament aspect of your life, then I respect that and I understand that. It takes a lot of work on both sides. 30 months ago was a very different picture for us.
Right.
Divorce was imminent, probably just a few weeks away. I'm so thankful that didn't happen. So thankful that God has done the miraculous in our life, but it wasn't without a lot of intentional, personal self-discovery, self-development, the want to. I and you both really wanted to. And, I understand times where divorce is the only and the right option in some cases. And it breaks my heart, especially when there's kids involved. But what I don't agree with is when I hear people on their fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh marriage, it's like, the grass is always greener and you can jump ship over and over. But if you'd actually just stop and put in some work on yourself and then on your spouse's temperament and understand some things, and of course, put God in the middle of the marriage, it's beautiful. Right. And I wouldn't trade our marriage for anything in the world.
When you said something about how most spouses spend a lifetime trying to change each other,
right.
I think that if we could flip that narrative, and if couples would spend their entire marriage trying to understand each other instead of change each other, how different could so many marriages look?
Yeah.
But too often, like you said, we're frustrated, we don't like different things, and we're constantly trying to change, or change the other person. But if we instead were seeking to understand the other person, like truly understand them, their needs, their strengths, their weaknesses, but we live in such a selfish society where it's just all about us.
Yeah.
And marriage is not 50-50. It's 100. If both parties aren't giving 100%, then the marriage is suffering. And realizing that is huge.
Well, jumping ship and chasing the green grass is more and more what the world does compared to 50, 60 years ago, even in careers. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing a few career changes through our lives and finding that perfect fit, if there is such a thing as perfect. But too many times I've seen it to be true. Men my age on their 30th job, and they're still making what they were making 20 years ago. And it's like, wow, if you would have just stuck it out with that first or second job, you might be making twice as much. You might have a whole different type of lifestyle because of that. Now, there's other times if they would have stayed with it, it would be miserable. So understanding your temperament will help in every area: business, marriage, friendships, ministry.
Absolutely.
So many people think, oh, I'm called to be a pastor. I'm called to be an evangelist. I got to get that microphone and stand up in front of people because this is what I went to Bible school for. And it's like, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe you'd be the most incredible janitor or usher or any other task. The body of Christ is full of so many needs in our churches, so many needs that I don't feel like either one of them are more important than each other. I feel like God has given us different temperaments for a reason. There's a lady at our church that comes early, stays late, and cleans up and picks up people's water bottles and tissue paper. And you can't take that from her. That is her ministry, her calling. She loves it. And I look at people like that and I go, that's awesome.
Yeah,
We all know Larry Savage from many years ago. Bless his heart. He's home now with God and my dad up there. But what a good example all my life, seeing him mow the lawn and do things that people wouldn't do, pick up dirty things and put them in the garbage, and people would walk by him and he'd pick them up. And what a servant attitude he had, and he was as much a leader and a minister in my life as the evangelists and the pastors and the people with the microphones. Right. So I hope that makes sense. Is just encouraging you, encouraging your family to look into temperament therapy. And if we can be any help at all, again, how to contact you?
Lana Lyman at gmail.com or dsministries.com.
Yep. And of course, this is just to encourage you. There's many of other people out there and people that do these temperament studies, I'm sure. But we want to be a resource and a blessing to your lives. God has put people in our lives that have greatly blessed us in the last few years. And although our marriage is not perfect, probably will never be, it's incredible. And I'm so thankful that God's given us these tools. And God bless you. Any closing remarks?
I don't think so.
To be continued. There'll be another one here soon. We will dive into a few other topics and look forward to talking to you in the future. Tom and Lana Lyman, the Joy Hour podcast. God bless you all.
Thank you so much for watching today's episode on the Joy Hour podcast. Don't forget to check out some of our other episodes for more powerful discussions. Want to keep up with new episodes? Be sure to subscribe. And as always, we'd appreciate it if you like, share, and comment your favorite part of this episode right down below.